Hello, welcome to the process. My name's Dr. John Bush. I love fantasy football, by the way. This is my lecture series on winning your fantasy football drafts. You may hear my dog in the background there. It's a textbook on Kindle. Trying to get it out every year. It's a couple thousand pages. Some serious data metrics there. So we are continuing uh, my early journey is on personal factors, these kind of things. So this is a continuation of that theme. Uh, let's call this lesson 3.1. We just had lesson 3, so we're now 3.1, challenges and biases that we as humans all have to deal with. Pretty much through evolution, heuristics gave us a pretty good chance to survive. Rule of thumb, if you hear a saber-toothed tiger growling in the weeds, you don't go over and look around and see what's there. Okay, you jump up the tree. So usually that gives us pretty good results, but uh, what is good for surviving in savannah and in our past may not be really helpful in today's data-driven uh, world here, as it were. In fact, some of these failures from simple rule of thumb heuristics are based on biases we all have, our hidden traps in our minds. We are all flawed and human, and we all have biases. I'm hoping that what I'm doing for you is just to let you realize that. Okay. You're going to see at the end that most people think they are all above average drivers, and most people think they're all above average when it comes to biases. In other words, they're not affected by it. So we have this blind spot, and we probably are more affected by these biases than we would like to admit. And at least knowing about it might give you pause and help you develop processes to deal with being stuck in the cognitive bias minefield. At least you know you're in a minefield, right? You're not sure where it's all coming from, but you're not just whistling a tune, marching through it, okay? Saying, well, where did that come from? Okay, so they can work and help us in problem solving. The rules of thumbs a lot of times can work for us. I mean, that's why they're rules of thumb. Uh, but again, depending on the situation, it may be the wrong rule of thumb to apply, right? Uh, a knife to a gunfight is the wrong heuristic, right? And so it's best to think about how you deal with your biases and or any things we can to deal with it other than just knowing we all have them and admitting that we're probably uh, in a situation where we're more affected than we would like to admit. That's a big step right there. So in fantasy football, these are rules of thumbs that are not optimized at all. They just work for various people, and if you ask everybody in your league some rule of thumb, they would probably give you way different answers, right? Having been and continue to be a fan of horse racing, right? One rule of thumb I remember was bet the gray all day, right? First gray horse you see. Well, sometimes that works, right? Long shots can come in. And so that's going to overemphasize something that really doesn't work, right? If the horse bobs his head up and down at you, then he's not telling you go bet on me. So the heuristics are the best we have as humans because we can't predict the weather, the future. Uh, and the rules are meant to speed up the process. And that's why these heuristics have came about, because people have used them on occasion and been right? Oh, they found that sleeper player. So most use heuristics as shortcuts to decide drafts and lineups decisions. That's fine, but you just need to be aware that they're all well and good till they don't work. Always draft a running back. Never draft a defense early. Okay, seems good advice here. An educated guess based on the new coach, a system, free agents. Maybe the tight end's going to be used more this year, so I should draft their tight end. Intuitive judgments can be heuristical. Stereotyping. We always do this and win, so I'm going to do it again. Common sense profiling. Should I draft a quarterback early or late? You see these debates on and on and on. And people will say, well, it worked for me, right? I knew a guy that smoked 20 packs of cigarettes a day and he lived to 100. Yeah. But somebody that caught lung cancer in their 20s, that telling them that doesn't make them feel any better. So we do use heuristics. We do need to understand that these things kind of fall to us when, especially in a stress situation in drafts, you got 30 seconds to a minute. So one of the things that I'm going to tell you that I use is I don't like time drafts. I like slow drafts. I need hours to think of, well, you must not know what you're doing. Okay. I like to be thoughtful about things, and it's hard to be thoughtful. And the stress that you will have picking 16 good picks in a couple hours is pretty tough. And if you're doing 50 leagues or more a year, that's a lot of effort to do that. That's why I use slow drafts. I can have multiple slow drafts going at once. So biases exist in us. We're not below average. We think we are. They're traps, and we got to acknowledge that. Okay? And, we should get on Twitter and, you guys are all biased, so I'm better than you. What? No. Again, the fast-paced approach to draft decisions, the more stress that you have, the more likely these biases are going to hit you. And there's certain aspects that are going to be filled with more bias than others. Consider these as leading you away from good or better judgment, good or better decisions. We're not talking outcomes. Okay, you've got to separate out outcomes and decisions. That's why it's called the process, not the outcome. That's why my lectures are called the process. There are many biases. I'm going to focus on some that I know we're all guilty of dealing with at some point. So first one, you hear this a lot, confirmation bias. When you seek to prove and ignore evidence to the contrary. So you prove a conclusion. Always draft a quarterback first. And you find all the evidence that supports that approach. You only look at positive data. You will miss the outliers. The dog didn't bark. Probably the most important thing. In the case, solving the missing horse. Sherlock Holmes story there. You tend to gloss over suggestions. Your conclusion could be faulty. You get onto Twitter and have a Twitter fight. No, you always draft your running back first. No, you draft a quarterback first. So some people like the rule. I draft 2 running backs first 2 rounds. I've won with that before. So you ignore that some issues about some of the running backs you're looking at. New coach, a hot new rookie drafted. Is it going to be a split backfield, a committee backfield? I mean, there's a lot of things. And if you just ignore that, then you get a big surprise. So you go about filtering the news reports, etc., and you focus on everything that seems to support. I'm going to take Tom Brady first as my quarterback. Boy, that's going to be a hot topic in 2021. I suggest you form a question and ask the opposite of it. So, what's the opposite of drafting a quarterback first? What about thinking about drafting a quarterback last? Or drafting a quarterback in the middle? Or another question, Tom Brady finishes 24th quarterback in 2021. How did that happen? In other words, this is going to make you think about things that could occur and maybe force you to walk away from confirmation bias. Don't know. It's hard to do because we won't, especially after a draft and you're going to a second one. It's like, boy, I got Tom Brady. I'm doing good. Let me do it again. And then you have 10 leagues and you've got him. Not only is that putting all your eggs in the basket, but, you should consider what happens if he's a dud this year or he gets hurt or something. Should you spread your picks a little bit? I don't know. Some people, do that. Some don't. But you at least got to realize there's some dangers there. So drafting 2 quarterbacks in the first round. Can you win by not drafting within the first couple rounds? In other words, 0 running back. Can you win with that? What evidence is out there to knock that down? Or, we can only falsify. It's kind of hard to prove things. That's not science. Science, we falsify. And there are probably people who will say, oh, I drafted Gronk in 2 wide receiver ones, and I won. I think we can all come to the conclusion there's multiple ways to win our fantasy football leagues. There's not a cut and dry formula. Okay? I think people that do that maybe get lucky, may remember last year. I don't go in thinking that necessarily. Okay? That's why you had the value concept, right? The value players. I take the best player on the board. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Okay? I like to look at the drafts of the winners in my leagues that I play and just kind of think about their decisions. What were they thinking? What was I thinking? If I didn't win the league, what was I thinking about my decisions? Not the outcomes, the decisions. What led me to those decisions? I think there are multiple ways to approach fantasy football winning. So I think you need to just get that. I like to be able to be flexible in my drafts. I'm sure there's a tendency, and it probably depends on, if I'm drafting first versus 12th, right, on the river, flipping it around, get that 12th, 13th pick. I'm probably doing things different than if I've got the first or second pick, just the way it's going to be. So how do we fight, looking for things that only support what we think is going to make us a winner. Again, I like the questions and flip the opposite. And one of my favorite questions is whatever. Saquon Barkley will be the 24th running back in 2021. How did that happen? If you ask, here's the statement, then the question, how did that happen? Does that allow you to dig a little bit into rookie drafts, into a new coach situation, into his health status? How's he doing in the off season? What's going on? Okay, may not, if you ask that every time, you may not get 100% right or wrong, kind of an outcome. All you can do is the decisions. So that's how I use to build information to make a decision. We should try to hold our opinions loosely. Decisions, not opinions. So what's leading us to this decision? What do we have control? We have control over what league we play. We have control over the type of draft. Is it slow draft or quick? Again, league, is it 2 quarterback, best ball? Should we change the approach? Every year, do you start by thinking about the quarterback first? Maybe we should think about the tight end first. I don't know. Change how you do things. How do you order your information? Look at new sources of information. Here's an article you can look at, how to overcome confirmation bias. So, overconfidence, overprudence. Overconfidence, you've decided conclusions beforehand. You don't have any doubts. This is the way to do it. Tom Brady is my quarterback. I'm going to draft him. Or overprudence. It's too safe. You're too conservative. You don't allow the draft to play to you and, allow yourself to pick a more risky situation, right? With risk can come high rewards, or uncertainty can come high rewards. If you're too careful, overprudence leads to missed sleepers, taking what everybody else is safe. The ADP player is the safe player because that is the wisdom of the crowd at that point. Sometimes that's a good decision. Maybe sometimes it's not. Do you draft too many risky players or not enough risky players? How does your temperament fit in to predict where you fall on that? Are you over or under confident? So you should know yourself. Do you play only when it's a sure thing, or do you gamble on which way the wind's going to blow today? Where do you fall? Think about it. If you're overconfident, then compare your rankings to the ADP. How does the crowd think about it? So again, here's the question. Why are they right and you're wrong? I'm not saying that is, but that could be the question. Why are there differences? If you see a highly ranked ADP player, Howie, that's the crowd thinks is 60th, why do you rank him 10th? If everybody says he's 60th and you're ranking him 10th, what is going on? What are you perceiving? What scenarios do you see that allows you to, pick the long shot? Then write down the evidence. Why are they right? Why is he really 60th and you're wrong at 10th? What are the crowd, it's seen that you're ignoring? I do different multi-hypotheses and try to test those. So that's just thinking of questions. There's two right there. He's ranked 10th because the crowd is missing this. Or he's ranked 60th because they perceive this and I'm missing that. So, again, if you're over or too prudent, then you're safe and you would ignore the 60th running back. So you would never even consider him. You discount the rookie RB that sees he's 15th. You think he shouldn't even be drafted. What is going on? Compare the two. Weigh the evidence. Weigh the information. Don't get stuck. A lot of people plant my flag. I've heard that a lot. Well, sometimes the flag in the snow starts the avalanche, so be cautious. Status quo, here's a good one. I used this approach last year, and I beat everybody in the league. So no use to change what I'm doing. Everybody in here is a sucker except me. So I'm going to do it again. So you're really against new changes or better approaches. You should never be satisfied in fantasy sports, fantasy football. Never. You've always got to look at patterns and ways to win. When I look at the data, I like to consider historic patterns in general. What's the averages of things? Only understanding that, I think, gives you an insight into maybe how you should go about it, or at least consider it. Okay? But, well, I used that last year. Don't need to learn anything else. How long's this game been going on? I got this. You know, if you're that confident and you know then, mortgage your house, find a league that, put you 10,000 up and go for it. Okay? So everything and all events are easily explained after the fact. You knew it all along. Well, everybody knew that was going to happen. No. So you need to think about your decisions and think about and write down what your predictions are, in quotes. Okay? And then look at it versus don't look backward. Okay? You need to look forward to your decisions. And then reread it after the season's over just to get a feel. What was I thinking here? So remember our draft said about 60% are right or we drafted correctly. About 40% are wrong. So just right after your draft, just kind of where were you gambling? What were you thinking? Why did you go this way? Why weren't you happy with your draft? I would ignore all the software that grades your draft. Grades it. How they grade it? Got a time machine? No, I wouldn't worry about that. I don't care what somebody else thinks, right? If you put effort, time into your process, then it's irrelevant what somebody's software says or doesn't say. So this is really your ideas, if you think about it. What your decisions are based on your ideas, your scenarios. Okay, why did you develop those? Where did those come from? Is that a trap here? Well, I did that last year. Uh-oh. Okay, status quo. So we're more biased than we think. You just write that down, put it up on the mirror as you're brushing your teeth every day. Your Like if you're a piece of wood and the termites are the biases, and you're all worm-eaten. We're all wormy humans. The parasites are all in us, keeping us away from the good decisions. We talked a little bit about intolerance of uncertainty, how that affects our decision making. So I would go back to my original lesson previously, lesson 3. So a lot of our biases and you can think as low, average, or high. In other words, are we highly, highly prone to some of the biases here? I think the intolerance to uncertainty, people are looking for quick fixes. They want to be done with it. You know, I'm tired of living with multiple scenarios in my head. I just want to pick one. I'm tired of this. Is this a problem? Are you just making decisions because you're not able to keep multiple possibilities in your head and you just want to be done with it? That's tough. It's tough to sit there every day and think about, and it could change. How you think about a decision in June may be way different than August. Maybe you're a better decision maker early versus late. So that's why I like to do drafts probably right after the rookie draft. And sometimes, some years I've done better early. I think I do better early. But if I'm just looking at the outcomes, maybe I've just got lucky. But it's just something that I feel more confident maybe. See, again, maybe I'm just tend to be more biased. Maybe more information is making my decision making tougher actually in August. A lot to think about in August. And everybody's shouting from the rooftops. You can't get on Twitter, Facebook, and deal with that. You've got to consider maybe you should turn off Twitter for a while. I don't know. Whatever works for you, think about it. So the guy that I think everybody should read his Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman, you can't improve your intuition. Maybe with long-term training, a lot of talking through, and exposure to fields such as behavioral economics, you can cue reasoning. In other words, I know I'm in a minefield, so I need to stop and get a little deep here. In the speed of things, the heat of arguments, rules go out the window quick, and heuristical rules of thumb come in. But I think it's interesting I found this. There's a program, Sears program, creating video games to train people to mitigate their biases. So government, industry have coming together trying to train people in that. I thought you might be of interest. I don't, we're probably not candidates to be in this, but I think the pipeline maybe will allow different ways to train and deal with biases. Virtual learning environments. Whether and how variables enable players' recognition and lowering the effect of biases. That's what they're trying to figure out. So what I just went through this lesson, we're getting towards the end here, it's not just some, Dr. Bush, you're crazy. I've been called that, I guess. the government, uh, industry, CIA, NSA, they're all trying to figure this out too. So this is worthy of studying to try to improve our decision making. Can't improve your outcome until I think you deal with decisions. So I think you need to and think about biases. And we're more biased than you think. Okay? And we're probably not below average in biases. We just think we are. And the last thing, blind spots. There was a study done. People have no idea how biased they are. Whether a good or bad decision maker, everybody thinks they're less biased. Everybody can drive better than their peers. This susceptibility to bias, blind spot, appears to be pervasive, and I like this, is not related to intelligence, esteem, or ability. It's just built into us, so we need to think about it. To the extent at which we're blind, probably has consequences for how good we're making decisions. If people are more prone to think they're less biased, there's probably double treats there, double negatives here? Yeah, more prone to think they're less biased than others or less accurate. They will listen to others' advice less and less likely to learn from training. So, the more you think you're not biased, probably the worse these lessons are going to be for you to try to change. In fact, you probably already moved on. I don't need this. Why am I listening to this fool on here? I drafted 3 wide receivers last year, and I know my first 3 picks, and I won. So that's the secret. What can I say? Anyway, I think I've gone through a big landscape of this. Not sure how much I've helped or hurt, because I still deal with this all the time. Think about it. It scares me. Okay, that was the end of lesson 3.1. More than you wanted, more than I wanted, but you know, sometime to have fun, we gotta pay a price, right? We gotta chop some wood to have a little fun. Okay, come back. We're having more lessons coming. Take care.